Hello. Hi, guys. Let me put my gratitude journal away. Do you guys do gratitude journals in the morning? Listen, welcome back to In Sync with Alexi, your new favorite podcast. I know it's your favorite. I know it's your favorite because last time, you guys, so many of you decided to leave more 5-star reviews, and I'm just so grateful. But as I mentioned last time, it would be so helpful if you left me a rating, a review, wherever you're listening. 5 stars would be amazing, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just asking for you to help me boost the number of ratings that I have. You know, when you're filtering for something and you can review by ratings, I'm never going to show up unless we get that number up. So please help me get it up there so we can get the word out. We can get our message and our community out there, guys. Thank you, as always, for being here. I'm so glad you're here. I'm pumped you're here. Marlon's passed out on the ground next to me. If you're watching the video, I'll show you a snippet in a second. But he's fully passed out. We've been calling him Moo Dang lately as a funny nickname. I think it's funny. Zach thinks it's funny. We call him Moo Dang or Mr. Moo. Mr. Moo Dang. In any case, we're having a lovely weekend over here. We went to the farmer's market. I got a stroller for Marlon recently. He will be 12 in January, so don't come for me. The stroller is a necessity. And, sometimes he gets tired and needs me to carry him, and I just can't carry him for like 2 miles. I'm going to start working out at home, though, so follow along for that. What do we do with this podcast? What do we do? Business in the front, party in the back. Yep. This is a mullet podcast. So we're doing business in the front, party in the back. We'll have some fun in the back. Let me pull this up. Guys, there was a crazy reporting in the New York Times over the weekend from Jonathan Swan and 2 of his colleagues. And it was about Trump at a meeting with donors recently, in which he called Kamala Harris, quote, retarded, and complained about the number of Jewish people who are still supporting her. So you should go read that. There's some new polling out, and I just want to point out a few things that stood out to me, because the overall national numbers are good. Like the New York Times Siena polling, good. Okay, here's from a Wall Street Journal poll across all 7 swing states. So 4,200 voters. Trump got 46% and Harris has 45%. That's simply too close to call and honestly terrifying. This was bad also from the Wall Street Journal poll. By 10 percentage points, more say Trump over Harris would be better at handling the economy, which is the economy is the issue that people say is the number one issue to them when they're voting. And so that's a little scary. But then I saw a poll yesterday before I was going on TV, and it was a poll of Black voters. And Harris was beating Trump on that same issue. Black voters viewed Harris as better equipped to handle the economy than Donald Trump. And I thought that was important. And that's not a narrative that has been told at all. I'll put links to the polling in the show notes. This is crazy to me. Are you ready for this? Guys, please let me know if I'm being crazy. Is this sexism? Or is it ignorance? Or is it something else? What is it? How do you explain this? Okay. Here's the polling question. Between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, who is best described by each of the following phrases? Okay. Has the experience needed to lead the country? What do you think the numbers are? Trump wins by 6. 48% to 42%. 48% believe that best describes Trump. Has the experience needed to lead the country? What is the, okay, great. Great, okay, awesome. Now let's look at this. Here's another one that's really confusing and annoying, and I wonder what you guys make of this. It's within the margin of error. It's a 1-point difference. Has a vision for the future. 44% to 43%. 44% say Trump has a vision for the future. The man who brought us concepts of a plan is beating Kamala Harris on the question of who has a vision for the future. I mean, yeah, okay, sure. I guess to be fair to that 44%, Trump does have a vision for the future and articulates it often. And honestly, it sounds a lot like the plot of The Purge. It makes The Purge sound like a reasonable policy proposal at this point. Here's another one that, not great. That freaks me out. Here's another polling bit, okay? Would bring about needed change. What do you think are the numbers? These are swing state voters, by the way. 45% Trump, 42% Harris. Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Now look, that's no reason to panic. And that's not even why I'm reading these numbers to you. I just think it's revealing. It's pretty revealing. So, just a little polling to start our day together, guys. Anyway, let's get real, okay? Let's start tearing down the smoke and mirrors, y'all. Today we're talking about something that literally just won't quit, and I hope you're not so annoyed by it that you've decided to tune it out or look the other way, and that is election denialism. Yes, it's 2024, and yet there are people who are still crying foul about the 2020 election, which has been settled in Joe Biden's favor over Donald Trump for years at this point. Now, thanks to JD Vance, who of course hopes to be our next vice president of the United States, he is perpetuating the big lie once again, totally trying to just muddy the waters around the issue of election fraud and election integrity and voting rights and tech censorship and voter suppression. He refuses to say whether or not Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. In fact, his most recent answer to the New York Times suggests that he's trying to find a way to say that Trump lost unfairly or would have won were it not for tech companies censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story on Twitter and elsewhere. He also said he wouldn't have certified the election results in 2020. This is reason to panic. The polls are not reason to panic. This guy is reason to panic. And the way that he is so rhetorically slick, Zach and I talk about that so much. It's so easy to laugh at Trump, and so many people, this has been found in focus groups lately with swing voters that Sarah Longwell and others have conducted. Many voters still view Trump not so much as this black and white, very clear existential threat to democracy, but rather as this, entertaining, funny, jokester, troll. JD Vance is not that way rhetorically or personality-wise. In fact, he's incredibly boring compared to Trump. But he is mad-making if you listen to him. And he is rhetorically slick and very deft at making the unreasonable sound not only reasonable, but obvious. But let's dig in and talk about why Republicans like JD Vance are still doing this and refusing to say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. JD Vance, the dude who has gone from hillbilly elegy to whatever he is now. Hillbilly elegy when he had a brief moment of seeming like a reasonable person, even a liberal. He seemed like a liberal. He said he hated the police at one point. He's not only cozying up to Trump's outlandish claim that the 2020 election was stolen from him, but he's perpetuating it in ways that are even more dangerous and will only continue this type of insidious politics in the Republican Party as the heir apparent to the MAGA movement. I am no stranger, obviously, to political theater, but this has gone way beyond politics, and it is now a full-on circus act starring JD Vance. The New York Times just put out this article about it after he did an interview with one of their podcasts called The Interview. And honestly, it was like reading the plot of a bad, shitty sequel. We have seen this exact storyline before, and I think that most of us in the country are ready to move on. But apparently, JD and Trump didn't get the memo, and they keep rewriting the memo to fit their crazy narrative. So they're recycling old drama, because there's nothing new, doing everything they can do to keep this narrative alive and to feed Trump's ego. Just side note, by the way, there's nothing more dangerous than an insecure man. I heard that from Tinks on her podcast recently, and it is so true. She was talking about it in context of dating. But I would just ask you to think about whether and how that applies to men in politics or people like Trump and JD Vance. In any case, they're doing everything they can to keep this narrative alive and to feed Trump's ego because he's insecure. And the worst part about all of this, there is zero evidence, zero, to back it up. This isn't about uncovering some grand conspiracy anymore. It's about staying relevant to a very specific audience, a very core group of those MAGA supporters who want the crazy and want the conspiracy theories to keep going. I mean, guys, think about it. Literally, why rehash the past? Why continue to obsess over the past? If they had actual proof, we'd be having an entirely different conversation. Donald Trump loves to show the receipts. If he had the receipts, he'd be showing them, but he doesn't. They don't have anything. Instead, they're relying on the same old claims, hoping that if they just repeat it enough and throw out a million different messengers to say it in different ways, then people will start to believe it. Now, let's get into their real motivation here, because I think it's important to examine exactly why they are doing this, not just what they are doing. JD Vance and Donald Trump are not doing all of this out of the kindness of their own hearts or because they're just like concerned citizens looking out for democracy. No, this is about staying loyal to Trump and his crazy way of thinking. And it's about staying relevant. Election denialism writ large has become an entire brand for Republicans. It's a loyalty test, sure, but it should also serve as some sort of cognitive test at this point. How many times could you be presented with hard, cold facts and evidence at work or worse in a courtroom and still continue to say, no, you're wrong, and I believe this to be true. I don't believe those facts and figures that you're putting in front of me. No, sorry, I don't accept that. What? Talk about the insane asylums, Donald Trump. Election denialism has become a brand for these Republicans. If you buy into it, you're in the club. And if you don't, well, you're totally on the outside looking in and probably being berated by the former president on Truth Social. I mean, let's be real. Like, election denialism is not just a belief anymore, and it's certainly not a fringe belief anymore. In some ways, for Republicans, it's also a marketing strategy. Politicians like JD Vance know that by hitching themselves to this big lie, they're just securing points with a specific group of Trump supporters, trying to ensure their longevity in the party that has been taken over by these people who believe in conspiracy theories. These aren't just regular voters. They're not swing voters. They're not low propensity voters. They are diehard, willing to go to the ends of the earth for their chosen candidates, voters. So if JD wants to keep their loyalty, he has to keep saying exactly what they want to hear and nothing that would challenge that, regardless of whether or not it's true. That should concern you. It concerns me. But here's the thing. This isn't just harmless talk or creating bigger echo chambers. By repeating these false claims, they're eroding trust in our entire political system. And by the way, when Trump leaves, after he's done with politics, Trumpism will still be alive and well. And that's dangerous. Because once people stop believing in the legitimacy of our elections, you guys, the whole foundation of our democracy starts to crumble. And these guys know that. They're banking on that. That is what they want. That is the point. A big part of it too that I've been thinking about, I've been thinking about this, and a big part of it also is psychological, right? It's so much easier to believe that the system is rigged against you and your interests than to accept that your side and your preference lost. I think it's also for some people about feeling a part of something bigger, right? Like a cause. Even if it's a cause that's built on a lie, it's people want to be part of organizations or organized groups, something larger than themselves. And the big lie gives them exactly that. Also, guys, people do not like to admit that they are wrong. Think about how it feels when you're wrong about something, like how it feels in your body, and then how you react to someone else when you're wrong about something. I guess when we're wrong, it challenges our worldview, threatens the stability of our reality as we've come to know it and construct it. But it is totally okay to be wrong about things and to change our minds. But if people generally don't like to admit they're wrong, imagine then having someone they respect in Trump or JD Vance, someone they look up to, then telling them, oh, you've been wronged. This isn't fair. Look at what they're doing to you because they're doing it to me. It's going to be a lot easier to believe them and believe in that way of thinking than to just question your own beliefs or to be reflective about what you think and how you've come to believe those things. This is why election denialism has such a grip on people. It's not just about the facts. It's about their entire identity, belonging. It's about validation. And also it's kind of, in some ways, like being part of a fandom, right? You're defending your team no matter what. You can get angry about it. There are clear sides. But unlike being a fan of a sports team or a TV show, this is not entertainment. This is about reality. And when people start defending a lie like it is a badge of honor, we are in dangerous territory, you guys. Okay, guys, so let's talk about the impact here. It is much bigger than just a couple of crazies online or in the MAGA movement. Election denialism isn't just some weird political quirk. It has real consequences. When a huge portion of the population believes that the election was stolen from them, it erodes trust in the entire system. And when people don't trust the system, they don't participate, or worse, they participate in ways to undermine it. We saw this on January 6th when the Capitol was stormed by people who genuinely believed that they were saving democracy. And in some ways, guys, I feel like January 6th was just the tip of the iceberg. Don't you? Election denialism spreads like wildfire, seeping into conversations, breaking up friendships, and even splitting families apart. And the worst of it all is like, this doesn't just go away once it's started. And it doesn't just go away overnight. And everyone who's been on the record openly questioning the results of the 2020 election, or worse, actively trying to overturn those results, should have to answer that for the rest of their political careers. The worst part of this all is that it lingers and will linger over every single election we have in the future, planting seeds of doubt in what will eventually sprout into full-blown chaos. I don't want that, do you? I mean, think about it. If we literally cannot agree on basic facts now in 2024, how on earth are we supposed to move forward about anything as a country? How are we supposed to talk to neighbors, strangers, friends, loved ones, people with different views? To me, it is not sustainable when one half of the country believes one thing and the other half believes the exact opposite. I mean, it's like we are living in two separate realities. Okay, before we wrap this up, let's break it down with some cold, hard facts, because sometimes, you guys, the truth just needs to be spelled out in black and white. We're talking about a mountain of evidence here, something that Trump and JD Vance do not have. After the 2020 election, Trump and his allies launched over 60 lawsuits challenging the results of the election. And do you remember how many of those lawsuits actually won? Guess. I'll let you guess. One. Just one. And that win, that case wasn't even about voter fraud or election results. It was literally about how closely poll watchers could stand in Pennsylvania. That's it. That's it. Out of over 60 challenges, the courts threw out or ruled against Trump's team in every single case. They did so citing a lack of evidence. And again, if they had the evidence, you guys know we would see it. You guys know Trump would show up with all of it printed out and bring it to every press conference and every rally. He'd have binders of the evidence. Why haven't we seen it? I mean, think about it. Like, if this were some grand conspiracy, don't you think they would have found a shred of evidence? Like something? Anything? The only instances of voter fraud that we found have literally been Republican voters. Like, it's not funny, but it's just like, it's so absurd. It makes me laugh sometimes. And like, guys, these were not small courts either. We're talking about state and federal judges, including ones that were appointed by Trump himself, by the way. They all looked at the so-called evidence presented by Trump's so-called legal team, and their verdict was unanimous. There was no widespread fraud in the 2020 election. It should be insulting to you as a voter, as an American, that JD Vance sat down with the New York Times and said that that is a slogan. That saying out loud or citing the fact that these lawsuits were ruled against or thrown out and that there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud, he said that's a slogan. A slogan? Excuse me, what? That is insulting. You know better. And it gets crazier. There were multiple recounts in key states. Do you guys remember this? Do you remember 2020? Do you remember the election? I was literally stuck in Wilmington. Not stuck, but I thought it was going to be like a 2-3 day thing. I was there for the entire week. I was like re-wearing clothes. It was a whole thing. I shot an interview for HBO, for our HBO show with Jim Clyburn in the middle of the election, like to talk about the House races and the House losses. It was a whole thing. Okay? But do you remember 2020? Do you remember the aftermath? Please, close your eyes. If you're not driving, close your eyes. Close your eyes and think back to the aftermath of the 2020 election. Think back to waiting for the results of the 2020 election, waiting for Pennsylvania. Where is Pennsylvania? Why haven't they counted the votes? What's going on? Remember, it was like 2 a.m. Donald Trump came out, did a press conference, and declared victory. I did not sleep at all that week, and I would do it all over again because it was so thrilling and riveting. But I don't think you guys remember how much was at stake. There were multiple recounts in key states, okay? Georgia did 3 separate recounts. 3! And every single time the results were the same. Biden won. Biden won. The election was certified by all 50 states. And the Justice Department, by the way, under Trump's own Attorney General, William Barr, said there was no evidence that would have changed the outcome. None. 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 Barr literally said, and I quote, "To date, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election." Okay? So, like, let's be clear, you guys, let's be very clear. Trump's own guy, his own Attorney General, shut him down, shut down these claims. And yet, we're still hearing about it. Now, you might think that after losing in court, losing the recounts, and being told by his own Attorney General that there was no fraud, this would be the end of the story. Should be the end. We're done. What more is there to say? We've given all our excuses. We've tried every avenue. We lost. We're taking our ball. We're going home. But here we are again in 2024. And Trump and his allies are still pushing this big lie. Let's not kid ourselves, you guys. This is not just absurd. It is dangerous. It is dangerous. Because when people believe this lie, it erodes trust in our entire system. And in the worst case, it leads to people committing acts of violence in what they think is pursuit of saving democracy. In pursuit of saving democracy. Fixing the system that they don't believe in. When they stop believing in and trusting the system, they think it needs to be fixed. And how do these people think it needs to be fixed? By burning it down to the ground and rebuilding it in their image. Do you want that? I don't. I don't. All of this just makes people think that elections don't matter and that you can't and shouldn't trust the outcomes, no matter what. And that is exactly the point for these guys. If you can't trust elections, then you can't trust democracy. And if you can't trust democracy, then what's left? A system where only those who shout the loudest or have the most money or are willing to manipulate and deceive end up in power. That's not a democracy, you guys. That is chaos. Chaos. I don't want that. Do you? So here's the bottom line. Take the emotions out of it. The numbers do not lie. The numbers don't lie. The courts don't lie. The recounts don't lie. Trump lost the 2020 election. Say it with me, guys. Say it with me, Trump. Trump lost the 2020 election, okay? We'll hold your hand as we say this. It's okay. We're processing. But you need to start processing for real. By continuing to push this big lie, he's not just lying to his own supporters and insulting their intelligence over and over again. He is eroding trust and undermining the very foundation of our country that he claims to love and want to be running again. And that should worry all of us, no matter whether you support him. Because if we let this slide, if he gets away with this, then what is next? What other lies are we willing to accept just to avoid facing the truth? The good news is, you guys, we are not powerless. As I always try to remind you, we are not powerless. So what can we do? First, we need to reclaim the narrative, okay? Fact check everything, even stuff that aligns with what you believe. And do not be afraid to question things, even if it's coming from someone you trust. If you have friends or family who believe this stuff, 1, I am sorry. 2, try to engage with them. Ask questions. Plant seeds of doubt. One question I think is actually really helpful when you're dealing with people who are talking about conspiracy theories or like the big lie and stuff, literally just ask them like, oh, that's interesting. How do you know that? Or like, oh, I haven't heard that or read that. Where did you learn that? How do you know that? Ask them, because that's revealing. That's very revealing. If they're like hotairballoonnews.com, I saw it on Facebook, blah, 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 blah. Fox News, whatever. Very interesting. Okay. So engage with them if you can. Ask them questions. You're not going to change their minds overnight. And certainly people do not change minds by being mean. No one's ever been like bullied into changing their mind, I feel like. But you will at least hopefully get them to start thinking a little bit deeper. And in a world where misinformation and disinformation literally just spreads like wildfire, that little bit of doubt that you introduce could go a long way for that person. We also really need to support nonpartisan organizations that are out here fact-checking and holding all of these people accountable, whether it's organizations like ProPublica, which has done incredible reporting on so many things, from people leading Project 2025 to the women who are dying in southern states because of Trump abortion bans. Places that are in the business of telling the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. Like exactly what we try to do on this podcast every single week. And finally, you guys, we need to keep showing up. We can't get tired now. You have to vote, volunteer, get involved in local politics. It could literally be your school board, city council. Because at the end of the day, democracy is not something we can take for granted anymore. It's something we have to actively participate in and uphold. And if we want a world where truth matters, then unfortunately, our reality right now is that we have to fight for that. We have to fight for it. So that's it for today's episode of In Sync with Alexi. If you have made it this far, you guys, you're a real one. You're a real one if you've made it this far. So thank you. Let's keep calling out the BS. Let's keep staying informed. And let's keep fighting for a future where truth matters. Please leave a review. And of course, tell your friends, share it with someone. Until next time, guys, stay fierce, stay informed, and most of all, stay in sync. I'll see you next week. Bye, guys. Mwah, 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 mwah. Mwah, 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 mwah. We got to get to the party section.